Welcome back to another episode of Trauma, Drama, and Life. I'm your host, Ben Taylor, and my wife,
Kayla Taylor.
And we're super glad to be back here. If you guys hear the podcast and something resonates, please let us know. Send us a message on Instagram or send us an email at ben@rawmotivations.com. Would love to be able to hear from you what you want to be able to hear us go over, us talk about. Maybe you have specific questions about things that we've struggled with or that we're working through. And we'll try to show up every single week to be able to give you guys a small sliver into our life, into the stuff that's happening on a week-to-week basis or specific topics that people have asked us to talk about. And one of the ones we want to talk about today is trust. A lot of times people think about trust and they're looking at there being a specific aspect of trust of like, is trust either earned or is trust given? Well, if you guys have been following on my channel for a while, you know there's a lot of trust that I took, a lot of trust that I destroyed. And a lot of the trust has taken a long time to be able to work back to the place where we've actually built up that trust and we've actually started to work on that. But going to the main question that we want to be able to digest and be able to work through a little bit, is trust earned or is trust given? So
it is.
Just throw it out there. It is. Yes.
It is. Drum roll.
Yeah. So we were driving home. We were talking about this because this is normally we record these during the day, but it's like late. We were driving home and I was like, actually, it's both, and I was being like really dumb as far as like.
I was like, no, it is earned. Like trust is earned,
And
not
I was
just
saying,
given.
It's earned. But I was trying to be silly with it and say that, like, think of it like a paycheck. You earn a paycheck and then they give you the paycheck. So then it's earned and given.
Yeah.
But like all jokes aside, like a big part is
and like arguments. They're not really arguments, but silly conversations.
But a big part of it is the trust is earned. And I think a lot of times society wants to say like, no, it should be given. And especially when you're in like a toxic relationship, like it's expected of like, well, you should respect me, you should honor me, you should trust me. And, it's not really the case kind of thing. What is your view of like trust in that regard? Because I feel like there was times in our marriage, in our relationship where, especially when it was in full toxicity mode, like I was like, well, you should trust me, even though there's nothing that you should have trusted at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely believe that trust is earned and not just given. And even it goes back to like even just in our relationship, like from the beginning, like he built that trust obviously, and then he got married. It slowly started chipping away by like things that he did. So even in the full like toxic part, even when he said just trust me, like in the back of my mind and in my gut, like I just had no trust there, but I also didn't have the proof to be able to blanketly lay it out in front of him to say, like, this is what you've done and here is all the proof. Like, I couldn't do that. It was just in my gut, and he's like, oh, that's just your gut instinct. Who cares? Like, blah, blah, blah.
Right. I was always discounting it.
Yeah, completely discounting it. But, so it's definitely earned, and so in my mind, I knew, like, if you're telling me to trust you, like, if you're saying, just trust me, just trust me, just trust me, then you're obviously hiding something. Like, to the full extent, I don't know. I could guess, but obviously to the full extent, I didn't know at the time. And I just, in my mind, I was like, something isn't right here, but I don't have the mental load, like, or capacity to even try to figure it out. And I don't think in my mind I wanted to accept that in that moment.
A possibility.
Yeah.
At that moment. Yeah. And like for me, like I kept saying it, but it wasn't like I was doing anything. I wasn't actually exemplifying trust. I wasn't actually exemplifying anything about like me being trustworthy or me putting forth an effort. And sometimes when I coach couples or when I talk to a lot of times men that have been hurtful or abusive or have cheated on their wives and things like that, I'll be like, what are you doing, to actually establish trust? And they're like, well, I'm going to talk better to her. I'm not going to lie. And I'm like, okay, how are you going to do that? And that's where it normally like stops, it stops of like, they don't move any farther with it. It's just like, well, I'm going to do this, but there's no actual plan. There's nothing actually like moving forward with that. And for me, like there was a lot of aspects of life that I'd grown up like just starting to put on a mask. I'd grown up starting to get to the place where I would lie constantly, and I'd lie to you, I'd lie to parents, I'd lie to coworkers, I'd lie to everybody. They just it was almost like second nature. And I think there's a lot of times that you saw like that second nature was like very much there of like you'd ask me a question, just boom, like lie. Like it wasn't really even like a thought a lot of times.
It wasn't like a pause or anything. You just would like, it would just like spew.
Mm-hmm.
Like it would flow. So then in your mind, you're like second guessing yourself. Well, maybe because like it's not like he hesitated. He just kind of like gave it out. So it's like, okay, maybe I am like thinking or over exaggerating or whatever it may be. And in my mind, I still was like, eh.
Right. What was the piece that you noticed different about like trust and lies, like obviously coming back into the relationship and like starting to move forward? Like, what did you see from your side? Because I'm just curious actually, because I don't think I've ever asked you, but like, what did you see from your side as far as like developing trust or me trying to work on the lies piece?
Yeah, I believe it took a lot for me to have to actually get to the place to where I was like, okay, there's probably going to be some things that he's going to say that's going to like rub me wrong, and it's going to open up that wound that's trying to heal. And I remember coming back, and it was like a couple weeks where something happened and somebody had texted me saying like, hey, like did Ben reach out to so-and-so? And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, because like a lot of times you like blank stuff out, so I'm sorry if I'm gonna like put you on the spot here, but and he was like, did Ben reach out to so and so? And I was like, I don't think so. Sometimes like, because it was like on the Marco Polo app.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, sometimes they like give funky things, and I was like, he's sleeping right now, but I can ask him later, but I don't think so. But in my mind I was like, that's still really sketch, because I'm like, So I literally remember I was like so mad, because at that point, like it was just like salt in the womb. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, you wanted me to come back. You wanted me to like work on this. And here I am. Blah, blah. Like I was getting so mad. So I literally go upstairs and I was like, I don't even care. He has to be up. Yeah. And like, cause this is when he was working like early morning shifts, like Amazon. So he was getting up at like 2 a.m. And so I went in there and I was like, I know you have to get up, but this is what just came in. Like, tell me the truth, like, blah, 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 blah. And I remember, like, you were, like, half asleep, and you're like, no, I didn't do that. And I was like, you're lying. Like, I can just tell, because this is just my instinct. Like, I'm done. Like, we're done. So he, like, once he wakes up, he, like, walks down. He's like, no, like, what? He's like, reiterate it. So, like, we talked through it, and he was like, so this is actually, like, what happened. And yeah, so we like talked through that and all of that, because I was just like, what? But it wasn't, you didn't initiate contact, you like started to, and then you accidentally like, but you deleted it so that, so there was nothing there, and then you like ended up deleting the app or something after that too, I think.
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah, no, I think there was like a piece in my like growth. I don't know if you remember, but like in the wall of that house when I had like the whiteboards up, like when I was actually going through stuff with Warrior and trying to figure out like who I am, but also like what I need to be honest about. I had a thing that I wrote down for a little while, but it was kind of like a step-by-step kind of like thing of like acknowledge the lies, like identify the lies, like get to the place of like catching the lies and getting to the place of like not having lies. But it was almost like a step-by-step progression for me. Like there was like a piece that I was like, I don't think I can go like cold turkey, so it's kind of like I was like, okay, like, oh, like that was a lie. So I was like acknowledging like I just lied, or I acknowledged like, oh, I've been hiding this, and then like identifying like when it's coming out versus like 2 days later kind of a thing, and then getting to the place of actually like catching it of like, okay, I'm not gonna do it. And like all of this, I'm like also like trying to go back through and like, oh, hey, I lied about this 2 days ago. Let me bring that up, and like walking back through to try to be able to say like, hey, this is me like trying to be honest. But it was like at that point it was almost like an addiction too. Like I'm not saying that to say I was the victim, but like it was an addiction of like it was just so easy to do, and getting to the place of like telling the truth was like so hard. And so
like it wouldn't even. I mean, you would. I remember there was at times that you would lie about like simple things. Like it wasn't even anything major. Like it wasn't cheating or anything. It was like if I asked you, hey, did you like do like, I don't know, put the dishes in the dishwasher. I don't know. This is like some random thing. And he would say, yeah, I did. And then I could come down the next morning and then there would still be dishes in the dishwasher. And I'm like, I thought you put the dishes in the dishwasher. Like, that's not a real life example. That's just an example of something simple that could have happened. But it's just those simple things.
Just like
and
automatic.
it's just, I was just like, why would you lie about something like that? And so for him, it was just automatic. So I had to realize, oh, okay, this is like an addiction and a problem for himself that he's having to break. He's having to break this like pathological like lying situation here. So in that moment, I was like, okay, like at least he got up and told the truth and we worked through it. Mm-hmm. And then it was just like slowly like things after and after that like kept
Did you building. See on your standpoint like how it got like shorter and shorter and shorter?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Because, I mean, there again, it wasn't anything major. There was things that was resurfacing that we were working through as far as, like, past affairs of, like, just different timelines and things like that. Because he said one thing and then he realized, like, oh, actually I lied and it was X, Y, and Z. So it was, like, I knew going into it, it was going to be a hard situation. And so I had to go into it with an open mind of, okay, there is no trust here at all. So we have to start from the ground and like figure out where all the rubble is and the pieces and put them back together. So trust in that aspect could rebuild. And it took a really long time for me to start letting that trust rebuild. And it was because I wasn't trying to rush it. I wasn't trying to, I think in a sense I was trying to protect myself for a little bit of time because I didn't want, because I had freely given trust back so quickly before, multiple times. And at this point I was like, I have nothing, like I literally have nothing left to lose at this point. So if we work on this for 6 months and he's lying the entire 6 months, okay, at this point there is no trust, there is nothing. So the least I can do is try to make it work one last time. And I would say it took a good 6 months for me to even like try to see if there was genuine growth and change and trust that I could even extend in one sense.
Well, it also took, I think like I've thought in my head, it also took like 6 to 9 months for me to like clear the lies.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it took a long time. I don't have like a day or a time specifically of like when it actually like changed, but like there was definitely like a piece of it that I felt like I'm actually at the place where I don't have any more lies, where like I've actually got those like out in one sense. Like I definitely remember there was like a moment that I kind of thought and I was like, I can't think of anymore, you know? And I mean, there's times that other stuff came up where like I'd say something and you'd be like, you didn't tell me that, or like stuff like that. And then, you know, that was just like at that point, it was just like more like quick ownership of like, oh yeah, like that happened too kind of thing. But there was like a moment that I remember that was like, I think I've actually cleared them all, you know? Yeah. That was like a positive moment, I guess, for me. So
yeah, it was positive. And I think I remember you saying it was like a little weird.
Yeah.
Like a weird feeling of like, oh,
almost like a peaceful feeling of like, okay, like this is what it actually is supposed to feel like, of not having to concoct a bunch of lies or different like false realities to like believe or latch onto, but this is actually where I actually am. So, but all that, we kind of like spun off that a little bit on the whole aspect of just like, is trust earned or is it given? And there's definitely big aspects of it being earned when you came back, and even before, there's different pieces that we put into place of me like trying to open up and be like really transparent of like where I was, like location, what I was doing, like you had access to like a lot of stuff, like different things like that, just trying to start off on the right foot of like, hey, like in order for me to get to the place where I'm actually going to build that trust with you, like I need to be at the place where I give it all up, where I'm not in control. And I think that's one of the biggest things as a narcissist that's the hardest, is like giving up control of, well, anything, but you know, specifically just like all my control, like being able to go to you in one sense.
Yeah, I remember that was definitely, I think for him it was very like vulnerable aspect because we've never had like that like openness in one sense. Like basically he's passcoded, like I have a passcode to his phone, where certain things are blocked or whatever, and he can't access them because I know the passcode and he doesn't. And I also know the passcode to his like Face ID, so I can just go in if I want. It's not something that I do very often, if not at all anymore at this point.
There's a period of time where you did.
Yes, and it drove me nuts because that was in the, well, coming back I did that occasionally, but
coming back you did it occasionally, but there was like change at that point versus before it was driving you nuts.
It was like more of an addict, like it was almost more of like an idol and an addiction for me, like, and it was harboring so much anxiety to pick up his phone and look at it. But then in my mind I was like, I need to know, but in my mind I still knew that something else was off. So I was just searching for that piece, and I should have known that he was like, he's, they're conniving. Narcissists are conniving. They know what they're doing. So
yeah. But I guess, like, what else, anything else that you want to bring up? Just talking about like the trust, like earning it versus like just giving it.
I think a way that I could sum it down is it's similar to the same thing as like respect. So think of it as your baby, or if you are a parent or a child, like a child or something, they don't automatically trust you. You taking care of them, you showing up for them, you doing X, Y, and Z for them, you providing a safe, loving environment for them is how they start respecting you and how they start trusting you that you're going to take care of them. Mm-hmm. And even though that is the simplest way, that's really how I term just in a relationship of how trust is earned. I get that some people freely can just like give trust, but there's a lot of people that have given, like, that are been in super abusive or toxic relationships that trust takes a really long time to build. And that's because it's ultimately earned, because you have to show up every single day for that person and show them that you're going to be loving, you're going to be caring, you're going to be there as best as you can. Yeah, you're going to fail because you're human, but at the end of the day, you're not making this toxic manipulation like pot of boiling water.
Yeah. And I think it's key to be able to know, like, as we put this podcast out, I know that there's people that are coming from all walks of life and all relationships, of just like understanding like that trust that you want to have with that other person. It needs to be something that they earn. And it's not something that you're like holding over them or like lording over them or whatever, but it's something that, like, if you don't see it, then you also need to be able to take a step back and be like, wait a second, like I need to focus on what's actually true. What's actually real. Like if they're not having, I normally say, the honesty, the vulnerability, and the consistent change, if you're not having that in any relationship, narcissistic, toxic, healthy or not, like it doesn't really matter. Like you don't have a foundation. And I think that's the thing that like we were missing a lot of times, is like the foundation that you thought was being built was typically built on a bed of lies that I'd created. And as a result, there was times that you felt that we were okay, just disconnected or communication issues when we weren't okay, but I had led you on to believe that because of the lies that I'd put as like the base foundation of our relationship.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah. Well, that's what we got for trust. And if it's earned or if it's given. If you guys like the episode, then please just rate it. Be able to share it with a couple different people and send some stuff in. We'd love to be able to hear from you guys. We had a lot of good feedback on some of the previous episodes, especially in the last season. So we'd love to be able to get some feedback of what we can do better, of what you want to hear, of what you want us to go over, and just otherwise you'll hear just daily life stuff and things that we're going through.
Yeah.
So awesome. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.